Welcome back everyone to another reaction video. Well, I'm thinking about the Roman Empire again today. I saw that Chat History had a video that came out about 5 months ago called Why You Wouldn't Survive in the Roman Empire. And I've got my Augustus shirt on today. So I thought it'd be a good time to dive into some more Roman Empire history. But before we do that, as always, the link is in the description so you can check it out without my commentary and see all the other videos that Chat History has to offer. Chat History was one of the participants in our recent Jeopardy series that we did over on Mr. Terry's channel, where a bunch of history YouTubers competed against one another in Jeopardy, and I'm proud to say that I made the comeback complete by defeating JD from the History Underground in the final after he had beaten me during the preliminary round. So we are 1-1 against each other. I guess at some point we're going to have to do a best of 3 match, but thanks to everyone who supported us over on Mr. Terry's channel. Hopefully he keeps that going for a long time to come. That was a lot of fun. Had a blast doing it. I want to thank Jeremy in Provo, Utah for his support on Patreon. Just signed up a few days ago, and I'm grateful for your support, Jeremy. Let's dive into this one. Somewhere Italian. Probably. Olive Garden? Not Italian.
What do you mean you're out of breadsticks? Freshly grated Parmesan, sir. Oh, yes, please.
It's been a long time since I've been to Olive Garden. I'm not afraid, as someone who's been to Italy twice and tasted the real thing, I'm not afraid to admit I love me some Olive Garden, especially with those free breadsticks. But you know what else I really love is Fazoli's. It's like a fast food version of Olive Garden, also with free breadsticks, which are also fantastic.
Very good, sir. Just say when. Alright, but it's gonna be a while.
You like the pepper? You ever see that SNL skit?
Oh, no.
Why is there a witch in my pasta?
Here we go again with the witch and such. You really should have taken better precautionary measures. Oh well, this time you're being lobbed into ancient Rome, a civilization that, apparently, is always on the mind of any male over the age of 20. But for you, you'll get to live it, or at least try to. Let's see what you're capable of, shall we? You arrive in the year 250, right in the middle of the ominously named Crisis of the 3rd Century, a tumultuous time of terrible turmoil which began a while back in 235 after Emperor Severus Alexander was assassinated.
Yeah, listen, once you get past what they call the 5 good emperors, we're talking about Trajan and Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius, those guys, it's all downhill for the Roman Empire, and you're really getting into, by the time you're in the 3rd century AD, you're getting into just a series of people being murdered and offing themselves, and just one after the other, people trying to take power.
Classic Roman emperor move. After being confronted by Germanic invaders, he, with some influence from his mother, came to the conclusion that violence was not the answer. Instead, he would pay off the invaders to frig off back home. What a great idea, Severus thought. It was not. In response, Emperor Alexander's most trusted military generals didn't appreciate seeing potential funding go to would-be invaders. So
this is what it's such a fascinating time when you get into the empire and you get to these later times. There's so much about the different power plays that are involved with different groups of people, with the Praetorian Guard and with the army, and with the Senate, and all of these different groups vying for influence and vying for power. And if you pay off one group to get their favor, another one gets really jealous, and whoever leads them might take over. Oh, it's just nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
They made a direct deposit of a knife into the emperor's neck. With interest. With him out of the way, the Roman Empire kind of fell on hard times, as empires tend to do when their emperors are killed off. New emperors were coming and going like one-night stands, the military became fractured and weakened thanks to countless civil wars and a struggle for power, and divided empire states took their chances at yoinking some lesser protected land for themselves. All really chaotic stuff, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, here you are, smack dab in the middle of Rome. Actually, you've landed in the Amphitheatrum Flavium, but Colosseum. You may know it as the Colosseum.
For those who haven't heard us talk about this, it was called the Colosseum because of the Colossus. It was this big statue. Originally, where it was built was a big palace that was built by Nero. And when they built the Colosseum, when the Flavians, the Flavian dynasty, we're talking about Titus, Domitian, who was the first guy. It was their dad, Titus and Domitian. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Went to go look it up and then remembered it was Vespasian. So Vespasian, Titus, Domitian, they're the Flavian emperors. They come in the aftermath of the year 69, which was what we call the year of the four emperors. And they built the Flavian Amphitheater, but it's called the Colosseum because of that big colossus of Nero that was built on the site.
A spectacular stadium of spectacle where performances
really
like
cool
dramatic
to
theater,
visit.
gladiator battles, and prisoner executions, among other things, took place across hundreds of years. But thanks to defunding and failed upkeep because, yeah, the Empire's in crisis mode, events were a lot more rare in the Colosseum during these times. So
yeah, and it was never a regular thing, right? It wasn't like a year-round, there's games every day at the Colosseum for centuries. It was like there would be moments of games where you'd have weeks and weeks of games, or you'd have several days of games, and then you might not for a while.
probably good to just leave and... Oh, that's a big guy. You can tell by how big he is. Just look at those muscle
You
veins,
can tell by how big he
chest
is.
hair. The menacing
Oh,
look.
dude, no, I didn't need that.
Terrifying. Let's see what he has to say.
Alios me provocare audet bellator.
I don't know what you just said.
O portet legere
Read the
bella.
subtitles.
Oh yeah.
Listen, chat history, you're in rare form with this one. I'm really enjoying the humor in this so far.
Con proba divitato.
Okay.
Elige divitello.
Oh, it's a
Alright.
Manscaped commercial, that's why.
Let's
All right,
advertise.
makes sense. I've got one of those. I use it when I haven't shaved for a while. It's really good.
Rule 1. The first strike is always precise. Rule 2. The second strike always finishes smooth.
You got rid of the unibrow?
Fabulus sunt vera. Is sentio omnino. Ineluctabiliter. Ceres.
Okay, this is pretty good. Did a pretty good job with that ad. I'll give you credit.
Oh,
Don't lick it.
Those are some smooth moves you got there. That was a pretty decent fight with a pretty decent loot drop. But now we have to shift from fantasy to reality. The struggles of ancient Rome were very real. Disease, poverty, and constant war were a daily concern.
And disease, while always a bad time in history, the Romans did better than most when it came to understanding some of the basic concepts involved in sanitation, like having sanitation as far as like clean water coming in, as far as sewers going out. They banned tombs from being allowed inside the city limits. That's why, like, when you go to Rome, you have to go out to the Appian Way, which was outside of the walls of the city of Rome, to see all the family tombs, because they didn't want that stuff happening inside the city, because they understood basic concepts of disease, even though they didn't necessarily understand things like the cause of, infection and things like that. So they did better than most.
Do you think you can handle a day-to-day life during one of the most difficult and dangerous times of the Roman Empire?
No, I don't.
Not like that, you aren't. You have to remember that witch interrupted your spaghetti dinner, so you're gonna need to find some food. Traditionally, the Roman diet consisted of a variety of fruits, vegetables, grains, and meats. But you're in the middle of a crisis which includes agriculture. This means that food supply is on the fritz. Some farms have too little water, some farms have too much water. This is too much water! Even fewer have it just right, so food's getting a little scarce. Thanks to widespread civil wars across the empire, many regions have also had their trade routes disrupted.
And when you control the trade routes, when you control the sources of food, that's why, for example, when we see the fighting that takes place between Mark Antony and Augustus, a lot of that centers around the source of grain, which a lot of grain was being produced in Egypt, which was controlled by Mark Antony at that time. And so food is, bread and circuses is the way they describe it, right? You got to keep the people fed and you've got to keep them entertained.
What little food choices you have are restricted to your immediate area. This, of course, led to mass malnutrition across the empire. Well, mainly for the poor anyway. Thankfully, the capital of the Roman Empire is able to provide some basic sustenance, for a price. So what's on the menu? As for vegetables, you have some choice of greens: parsley, peppers, cabbages and celery, asparagus and watercress and artichokes and lettuce, which is alright for just a quick bite, but you're a dude who needs better food to set you right. Maybe a fig, or maybe some dates, some apples or cherries or peaches or grapes.
And it depends on like your status in society, right? What you're going to have access to. One of the ways they can tell when they examine a person's remains, even 1,000 years or more later, is they can kind of tell what status that person had in society by looking at their bones and looking at what kind of diet they had.
Bread's for sure, there's some here to eat, just don't get your hopes up if you're looking for some meat. Weather and war have fucked up the supply, so these are pretty much all your choices, my guy. Beggars can't be choosers, but I beg you to choose. Survival is the game that you don't want to lose. And if you're looking for a drink to imbibe, have some watered down wine. You should also subscribe. Sorry, got lost on a rhyme scheme
That was
there.
pretty good,
Anyway, time to make a purchase. Luckily, you have some gold from your previous altercation, and it's plenty to get you by for now. But it doesn't buy what it used to. See, the emperors, in all of their untold wisdom, needed money in the coffers to pay off incredible debts from beefing up the military and keeping peace with foreign entities. In order to...
Imagine that. A major, powerful country on the planet running up massive debts because of its military and its obligations. Feels a little close to home right now.
do that, they chose to, among other things, devalue the currency by minting coins with lesser and lesser composition of precious metals. This inevitably caused rapid inflation, which is disturbing from both an economic and a fetish standpoint. Hey son, you watching more of them funny history videos? Go to your room. Since you have the cash monies, time to consume some nutrients. Problem is, you're an outsider, and unless you're fluent in the dead language of Latin, you're in a pickle, but you try to communicate with what little knowledge you have of the Latin language. Wingardium Leviosa?
Little Harry Potter reference.
Well, that didn't work. You go up to the next vendor and instead just point to what you want. Why speak when your money can do the talking? Nimis pecunium. Yeah, thanks, you too. Alright, now you... Oh no. Your body isn't used to consuming all that ancient food. Looks like you need to go do some business. In a bit of a sweaty, stinky panic, you manage to find a public restroom. Ugh, it reeks in here. Don't these people have any sense of...
hygiene? I mean, they did.
Welcome
compared to
to
most
the
people
Forica,
at that time.
also known as the community turlet.
Yeah, and to us, this looks really strange. Like, I could never, ever, ever, ever sit next to a bunch of other people doing their business and be able to function and do that. You know, it's weird enough being in a stall next to somebody, and like I try to avoid doing that in public in general anyway, right? But understand that their sense of what was comfortable and appropriate was different then than it is now. To them, this was no big deal. Our sensibilities have changed.
Several holes carved into long, cold marble slabs, perfect for slamming your ass on and expelling your evils. Usually hooked up to a public bath, excess bath water would run along the floor to flush away your densely digested duty poos to a public sewer system. If you were lucky enough to have it actually attached to one. Sure,
right.
You could be like them rich folk with their own private bathrooms, but you're not.
And, I mean, this was one of many reasons why we think about the Roman Empire all the time. They were advanced for their time. You look at the next 1,500 to 2,000 years of history after this, and most places in Europe, you weren't finding a system like this.
So instead, you have to make bears with the bros, and you're gonna have to get real friendly, cause as you may have observed, there's no toilet papyrus to speak of. No, instead, you're gonna have to ask Claudius here to share the community wiping tool.
Yep. It did get cleaned off in
It's just
between.
a sea sponge on a stick. Once you've done cleaning your nethers, be sure to rinse it off in the shell.
Yeah, take a look. So you see how they've got the water flowing in there. I mean, this is just... I know I keep raving about it, but my couple of times that I've been in Italy now, especially going to Pompeii, where you can see a lot of this stuff preserved, and you can actually see the pipes running along the streets, and you can see where they repaired the pipes. I mean, just awesome stuff. Really, really cool. I know it's weird to think about this stuff, but this was high tech.
shallow trough in front of you for the next guy. That's just common courtesy. Now, being a public bathroom and all, you could expect that these places were not the cleanest. And you'd be correct. Excessive buildup of waste not only led to widespread disease, but also
Methane
dangerous
buildup.
levels of methane. Ugh, Claudius,
light a
light
match.
a match, dude. Let's try the bath
Exactly.
instead. Public baths in the Roman Empire, called thermae, were actually pretty sweet. Available to anyone who wanted a nice refreshing dunk, these bathing complexes were a social gathering spot. They included exercise areas, steam rooms, and sometimes even libraries when you want to read a soggy book. Problem is, you're in a stagnant bath that doesn't get cleaned all that often, and hundreds of Romans use these baths every day, not to mention the fact that there isn't a bar of soap in sight. Romans didn't have soap. Instead, cleaning was done
And you
with...
didn't have chlorine to keep your pool looking pristine and clean and free of bacteria.
this monstrosity, the strigil, a bronze tool used to scrape off the days or weeks' grit and grime. Just be a little cautious when using it.
That I didn't know about.
In order to smell nice, Romans would apply scented olive oils all throughout their nooks and crannies. But now everyone's all slippery and oiled up, so...
I hope we're going to talk about how they used urine to like clean their clothes and stuff.
Step. With all of that muck
brush their
just
teeth.
soaking in the water, it's debatable how clean you actually got. Looks like all the Christians are moving in and telling everyone to cover up. What losers. Anyway, let's shimmy on down the road. Just keep your eyes to the skies for any other citizens who are emptying their festering chamber pots into the street.
So, he made the reference to Christians there for a minute, so let's talk about this. I think there's a widespread belief that until the time of Constantine that Christians were regularly under persecution throughout the Roman Empire, and that wasn't necessarily the case. There were moments of widespread persecution under Domitian, under Nero, Diocletian in particular. Maybe not Domitian, but Nero and Diocletian were the big two, really. And there were pockets of persecution at times where it got really bad in places. And there was a general distrust of Christians. There were a lot of factors for this. And one of the reasons I've heard it explained well is, and people wonder, well, why weren't the Jews persecuted to the same degree that Christians were in the Roman Empire? Well, understand that when the Jews were conquered, they were monotheistic, which of course put them at odds with a polytheistic Roman Empire. But they were a particular culture. They were located for the most part in a particular place, though they had pockets other places. But they weren't doing widespread evangelism where they were converting Roman citizens to become Jews. And so they weren't seen as a threat in that way, whereas the Christians were converting soldiers and members of the equestrian class and people in leadership, and any Roman could potentially become a Christian. And so they were viewed, because they worshipped one God, as being a threat because they didn't fall into the cultural norms that the rest of the Roman Empire did, and they didn't believe that the emperor was a god, which many emperors claimed to be. And so that could be viewed by some as treason. But eventually, of course, it was the ban on Christianity was changed under Constantine. It didn't become the official religion of the Roman Empire under Constantine, but it was decriminalized.
It's gonna be raining cats and logs. Oh yeah, you're definitely gonna be catching some sort of... I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn that an overcrowded and filthy city tends to be riddled with disease. Just look at modern LA. When it came to ancient Rome, the most common diseases were influenza and tuberculosis, as well as some STDs, but...
Tuberculosis, to this modern time, to our modern day, is still the most lethal communicable disease in the world. It still kills more than any other.
Person who's waiting for marriage or proper emotional or monetary compensation before you explore that route, right? Right. So despite these common diseases, Rome would often be smacked in the face with various plagues. The term plague here meaning big, bad, unknown disease that killed a lot of people.
That's an important distinction he makes there. When we think of plague today, we think of like the Black Death, bubonic plague, or later pneumonic plague. But in their context, a plague could be anything. I mean, COVID was a plague in their context. So understand the distinction between the specific disease we call the plague and outbreaks of plague in general.
They were plagues, just not the plague. This one is the Plague of Cyprian, named so after the Bishop Cyprian who wrote about the plague in fine detail. especially the symptoms. He wrote that the plague caused exhaustive diarrhea, a swollen and sore throat, constant vomiting, bloodshot eyes, loss of infected and putrefied limbs, paralysis, deafness, and blindness. All of these symptoms add up to one dead fella. Because of the bizarre symptoms, which don't point to any one known disease in particular, historians are still unsure what this plague actually was, but some suspect—
That's the same is true with things later on, like in the UK, what is now the UK, in England then. They would have outbreaks of what they called sweating sickness, and there's still some debate about exactly what that was.
Either the Ebola virus or smallpox.
Ebola.
Regardless, the plague of Cyprian devastated the Roman Empire. At its height, the plague was estimated to be killing off about 5,000 Romans a day. This crushed the Roman military, opening up opportunities for possible invasions, which, of course, would—
Not only crushes your military, it crushes every aspect of society, because it's not only one particular group dying. So you're losing your farmers, you're losing your shopkeepers, you're losing your people in the medical profession, you're losing your senators, you're losing everything.
Crushed the Roman military even more. Local farms were abandoned, and since trade routes were still cut off due to internal clashes, famine became the new hot commodity. Entire cities saw rapid declines in population, the most notable being the city of Alexandria, Egypt. It sustained a 62% drop in population between the years of 249 and 262.
I mean, that's something that's going to take 100 years or more to recover from if you don't have another plague break out.
This was caused by citizens either fleeing or dying, or both. So it looks like tons of people are leaving Rome. This can't be good. You're also down to your last few gold Oh, yeah. Crime's a thing. Oh, well. I'm sure that guy will get what's coming to him.
Stop!
And you had gangs. I mean, you had a lot of that stuff going on.
Well, now you're just straight up out of money. Looks like you need to get a job. And you know what's hiring the most right now? The military. So you go up to a local guard and you ask him to join. I join as militum? Yeah, sure. Success! The guard gives you a quick once-over to make sure that you're cut out for the job. In order to join the ranks of the Roman military, you needed to meet some criteria. You must have been at least 5'7", between the ages of 7—
Which is actually pretty dang tall for that time period. I mean, yeah, that's probably the average height or more at that time.
17 to 23, and physically fit.
Swole AF. You could also be an auxiliary, though. Like, if you were some from these realms that got conquered by the Roman Empire, though they're not doing much conquering of new territory at this point, they kind of reached their peak under Hadrian and Trajan, and then kind of from there, not too much. But you could join the auxiliaries, and there was the potential to actually become a regular part of the Roman military, or at least become a citizen.
Yeah, and a guy. Sorry, ladies, you're not allowed to die for the Empire, just with it. Welcome to the military. Now, when you imagine a Roman soldier, you might think of this kind of a guy. This is a centurion, a highly trained and high-ranking commander.
Company commander.
Which is something that you'll never be.
I mean, you'll see, if you look at the breakdown of how the Roman military operated, you can see kind of the preview of the modern military breakdown. A centurion's roughly a company commander.
Your aspiration should be lower to that of a typical foot soldier. Sure, it's not as glorious, but these were the muscle of the Roman military. After months and months of rigorous and extremely taxing training, including combat and unit formation, you've been given the privilege of being javelin fodder for the Roman Empire. Here's your complimentary gear, generously provided by the taxpayers. Your primary weapon is your trusty gladius, a 24-inch steel short sword. Your secondary is your pugio, a wide flat-bladed dagger for when you want to remind your enemies of personal space. You're also given a
javelin. Yep.
A pretty sweet javelin, and it does this. Pretty neat, huh? It was kind of designed to be a one-and-done type weapon, used to pierce enemy armor or get stuck in their shields.
But it was a good first strike weapon. It's basically you're firing off a couple of shots at range before you get in close with your sword,
rendering them useless. Typically, a pilum weighed about 2 to 5 pounds, so they were pretty easy to lob at the enemy. As for armor, foot soldiers in the 3rd century typically wore lorica hamata, a bronze and iron chainmail shirt which offered great protection against slashes and cuts, just not so much against the stabbing. In addition, you were given a scutum, a large wooden round shield for protection against projectiles and parrying the enemy so you can scoot them back. You also have to protect your dome, so make sure you grab a helmet. In addition to protecting your melon, these also protected the back of your neck as well as your precious cheeks with tieable cheek guards. Now, you're ready to fight. Time to head west to the front lines. Since it's the year 250, the Roman Empire faces a terrifying foe.
Germanic?
The Goths.
The Goths, yeah.
Truly
The
barbaric
Goths.
people that have the gall to invade the Roman Empire. For the
Gall.
sake of brevity, they hate you because they ain't you. So their goal is to take everything you have.
And the Goths, by this point, I mean, they used the term barbarian, the Romans did, for anybody who was outside of the empire, but it didn't mean that they were these mindless heathens, right? I mean, they were organized. They many times had societies very similar to the Romans and had governmental structure similar to the Romans. They had learned a lot from centuries of fighting against the Roman Empire.
Just as long as they're back in time for their moms to pick them up from the mall. You spot one of their many headquarters in the distance.
Hot topic.
But you'll never break through their front line. Unless you're able to build up enough speed. But how? There! Can you do this? Yes, you have to. For the Empire. You carefully position yourself, you turn around, and... Oops, wrong angle.
Back to
Just say
Olive Garden.
when's,
All right, that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too. Let me know your thoughts. Use the comment section below, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.